as the world's second-largest economy, only behind the United States. Yet in many sectors, from manufacturing to infrastructure, the world's most populous nation has already surpassed America. And that raises one profound question. Can China truly become the world's leading superpower? Or has it already done so, in ways the rest of the world is only beginning to recognize? A nation richer than America, by the numbers. According to the McKinsey Global Institute, in 2020, China's net worth, the total value of assets minus liabilities, reached $120 trillion. Far exceeding America's $89 trillion. In just 2 decades, the country's wealth has risen 17-fold, from $7 trillion at the start of the century. It marks only the second time in modern history that the U.S. has been overtaken in total national wealth. The first was Japan in 1990. Right before its property bubble burst. And like Japan back then, much of China's wealth surge has been built on real estate. Housing prices in 50 major Chinese cities are now 13 times higher than the average annual income, up from just a tenth of that ratio in 2015. Driven by a deep cultural belief that property values never fall, housing prices have quintupled in 2 decades. With no unified property or inheritance tax, holding real estate in China is remarkably cheap. Few owners are willing to sell, keeping supply tight and prices inflated. But Beijing, aware of the growing risks, has begun to cool speculation by tightening credit, a move that has already rippled through the economy. The manufacturing empire. If wealth is the foundation of prosperity, manufacturing is its engine. China has long been known as the world's factory, producing around 35% of all manufactured goods globally. More than the United States, Japan, Germany, South Korea, and the United Kingdom combined. One of the clearest signs of this industrial dominance is shipbuilding. According to China's Ministry of Industry and Information Technology, Chinese shipyards produced over 42 million deadweight tons in 2023. Half of global output, and 4 times what they produced 20 years ago. For 14 consecutive years, China has led the world both in production and new orders. Major hubs, the Yangtze River Delta, the Pearl River Delta, and the Bohai Rim, are now shifting to smart and green shipbuilding. Emphasizing LNG, methanol, hydrogen-powered, and electric vehicle transport ships. China also produces 55% of the world's steel, 96% of dry cargo containers, and 70% of port cranes. Backed by strong government financing, subsidies of 13 to 20% per vessel. And $127 billion in credit lines between 2010 and 2018. Beijing has built not just a commercial industry, but a strategic dual-use sector that can serve both trade and defense. In times of crisis, civilian shipyards can pivot to naval production, enhancing China's maritime capability in the Indo-Pacific. Infrastructure, the steel skeleton of modern China. Perhaps no achievement symbolizes China's rise more than its high-speed rail network. From just 672 kilometers in 2008, it has expanded to 45,000 kilometers, more than the rest of the world combined. In 2023 alone, China added 2,776 kilometers of new lines carrying 3.6 billion passengers and nearly 4 billion tons of freight. The government's target is 50,000 kilometers by 2025 and 200,000 by 2035. Connecting nearly every city with over 500,000 residents. With an average construction cost of $17 million per kilometer, far lower than in the US or Europe, China's railways are a case study in speed, scale, and cost efficiency. Behind these figures lies an enormous domestic demand. Rapid urbanization and massive public investment have given China one of the most advanced transportation networks in Asia, a backbone for future regional growth. The 5G revolution and beyond. By 2023, China had 754 million 5G users, representing over half the global total. With 3.2 million base stations nationwide, roughly 22 per 10,000 residents, the country has effectively entered the era of hyperconnectivity. 5G is not just about faster phones, it's transforming industrial automation. Some 7,000 factories and 691 coal mines now rely on 5G to operate autonomously, cutting on-site labor needs by up to 18%. At the port of Qingdao, 5G-enabled automation has made it one of the fastest container terminals in the world. Telecommunications now account for 5.5% of China's GDP, providing over 8 million jobs. The government is already leading in 6G research, aiming for commercial deployment by 2030, with speeds dozens of times faster than 5G and integrated AI control systems. The energy paradox, power and pollution. China is the largest producer of electricity in the world, generating 9,200 gigawatts in 2023, nearly twice the output of the United States. Yet 63% of that power still comes from coal, making China the largest emitter of CO2 globally, responsible for about 1/3 of total emissions. The 2021 power crisis forced Beijing to increase coal production to stabilize supply, even as it pledges to peak emissions before 2030 and achieve carbon neutrality by 2060. At the same time, China continues to pour investment into renewable energy, which now accounts for 1,260 gigawatts of capacity. The country leads the world in wind and solar power, with 440 gigawatts of wind and 610 gigawatts of solar capacity installed by 2023. The Three Gorges Dam, generating 22.5 gigawatts, remains a global symbol of hydroelectric power, while another 60-gigawatt super dam on the Yalong River is being planned. Still, renewables face limitations. Their output depends heavily on weather, and storage remains costly. For now, coal continues to power the nation, both literally and metaphorically. The green industrial triad, EVs, lithium, and solar power. China is not content with being a manufacturing base. It aims to dominate the industries of the future. Its new industrial trio, solar panels, lithium batteries, and electric vehicles, generated over $130 billion in exports in 2023. Chinese firms produce 80% of the world's lithium batteries. Two giants, CATL and BYD, dominate the global market. BYD, the world's top-selling EV manufacturer, recorded a net profit of $4.177 billion in 2023, up 81% from the previous year. With lower labor costs, cheap land, and state-backed loans, Chinese factories can produce batteries and solar panels at 2/3 the cost of Western producers. However, many EV companies still operate at thin or negative margins, prioritizing market share over profit. This has led to accusations of price dumping, prompting trade tensions and new tariffs from Europe and the United States. The challenge of sustaining growth. 2 decades ago, China's GDP was only 16% the size of America's. By 2020, it had risen to 75%, leading analysts to predict that China would surpass the US by 2027. Yet today, that figure has fallen back to 64%, as the economy slows and internal pressures grow. In 2023, China's GDP reached 17.66 trillion, compared with 27.36 trillion for the US. Measured by purchasing power parity (PPP), China overtook the US in 2015. But PPP is often seen as a poor measure of real living standards. The country now faces mounting headwinds: a shrinking working-age population, record youth unemployment at over 20%, rising labor costs, and a rapidly aging society. The United Nations projects that by the 2030s, China's workforce could shrink by more than 100 million people. Without productivity-driven growth, the nation risks falling into the middle-income trap. Too rich to compete on cheap labor, yet not innovative enough to lead in high-value industries. The road ahead: promise and uncertainty. Still, China's long-term fundamentals remain strong. The government is introducing demographic reforms, raising retirement ages, encouraging rural migration, and boosting investment in education, healthcare, and innovation. Many economists believe that if stability and reform continue, China could still surpass the US by around 2035. But if momentum is lost in the coming decade, that window could close for good. Closing reflection. China has traveled an extraordinary path, from a poor agrarian nation to an industrial powerhouse. Yet becoming the world's #1 superpower will require more than factories, railways, and wealth. It will depend on innovation, demographic balance, and global trust, resources harder to build than steel. And so the question remains: is China destined to lead the world, or to stand as a mirror reflecting its own rise and restraint?